So it's a pleasure to welcome Rabbi Etshalom, who I don't think needs really an introduction. He's been teaching Torah based for many, many years. He's a prominent author. He teaches Daf Yomi, Tanakh. He works in the schools in LA, and it's a pleasure to welcome him back to Torah in Motion. Okay, Rabbi, I hope that's short and quick enough. If you want to add anything,
that's great. Just make me a host and I'm a happy guy.
Yes, I will do that in 1 second. Okay, where are you? Okay.
It all feels very Catholic with making me a host, but
we can make you a co-host. Okay, Bakasha.
There we go. Good. Okay, thank you. Greetings, everybody. How you guys doing? I hope you're all ready for the last full week before Rosh Hashanah, and that week always includes Parshat Tavo. Parshat Tavo, just as a quick introduction, serves as a bridge. So to clarify, and by all means, speak up. What is Sefer Dvarim? Go ahead. What is it? It's a speech. Whose speech?
Moshe.
Moshe's farewell speech, but it's not only a farewell speech. The farewell speech is made up really of 3 parts. The first part is a very quick historic rundown of how we got to Arvot Moav. The main bulk of the speech is what we call Ne'um HaMitzvot, which is its own shiur, and it is a presentation or a representation or an alternative presentation, depending which mitzvah we're talking about and whose interpretation you're following, of the mitzvot that appear chiefly in Shmot and Vayikra and Bamidbar. And there's a number of new mitzvot. The Ramban in his introduction is delightfully clear about that. However, the end of Sefer Dvarim is a collection of different components of a farewell. The main component is a brit. And so Parshat Tavo includes 2 britot, meaning 2 components of the brit, one for the future and one right now, meaning it's kicking in right now. Parshat Nitzavim ramps that up to a higher level of brit. Parshat Vayelech is really just an introduction to Parshat Ha'azinu. And Parshat Ha'azinu is sort of the epicenter and the culmination of the brit. And after that, Moshe blesses the Shvatim and Moshe dies. And that's Sefer Dvarim. Okay, we can all go home now. But Parshat Tavo serves as the bridge, as the transition. Because since Parshat Va'et Hanan, right at the beginning of Dvarim, we have been engaged in one form or another, Ne'um HaMitzvot, Moshe's representation of the mitzvot. That list of mitzvot ends at the beginning of Kitavo. Parshat Kitavo begins with the mitzvah of Bikurim and the related mitzvah of Vidui Ma'asrot, both of them which have to do with bringing gifts from the land, and both of them which have to do with associated public readings that are done that accompany that gift. All right, so that's those mitzvot. And immediately after that, still in Perek Chavav, there is a presentation, an introduction to the Brit. And the Brit is what makes up Perek Chavchet. Perek Chavchet, which is the bulk of Parshat Tavo, is very long. It's 69 psukim. It comes in as the second longest perek in all of Chumash if we're counting psukim. And most of that is what we call the tochecha, the rebuke. What will happen if we do not follow the mitzvot? It is far more graphic and far more scary and hopeless than the parallel one that shows up at the end of Vayikra, and it ends up on a bad note. The last pasuk is you're going to end up being shipped back to Egypt as slaves, and nobody's going to buy you. So a total reversal of Jewish history, and not even. And that's the Brit. Afterwards, that then segues into kind of an entry into the big Brit of Nitzavim, and then that leads, of course, to the culmination of the Brit, which is the Song of Ha'azinu. Okay. But I skipped something, and the part I skipped is what we're going to focus on here. There is yet another Brit that shows up near the beginning of this whole sequence, and it is the Brit that occupies Perek Chaf Zayin. Perek Chaf Zayin of Dvarim goes a little bit off topic. Why is it off topic? Because the presentation of all the mitzvot in Dvarim was often prefaced by Ki Tavo ela aretz. You're going to come to the land, you're going to want a king. You're going to come to the land, you're going to associate, you're going to create judges, a court system. You come to the land, you're going to make sure that you have the place where God chooses to have his name rest, and you're going to bring the korbanot there. Always when you come to the land, mitzvah, mitzvah. Suddenly, that same motif kicks in with a very different take, which is the following. And I'll read from the beginning here, the small print, just to get us into the set. Right, so keep the mitzvot that I give you. That's a common and repeated motif in Dvarim. So the day that you cross the Yarden, El haaretz asher Adonai lecha noten lach, v'kimotalecha avanim gdolot v'sata otam basid. You're going to set up unhewn rocks. You're going to set up huge rocks, and you're going to plaster them. You're going to plaster the rocks so you can write on them. Now, we don't yet know where this is going to happen, but if it's going to happen as soon as you cross the Yarden, we have to assume it's going to be right near the west bank of the Yarden. And then you're going to write all the words of this Torah. Does this Torah mean Dvarim? Does it mean the whole Torah? Does it mean parts of Dvarim? Unclear. So you'll be able to successfully come to the land. And this is echoed later when Hashem says to Yehoshua that you should always keep the Sefer Torah with you and always be reading its words so that you'll be successful in your wars. So the same kind of motif. Remember these words of Dvarim, remember these words of the Torah, so you'll successfully come to the land. Okay, so far, very nice idea, but here's where things get a little strange. When you cross the Yarden, take these rocks and set them up on Har Eval. Now, Har Eval is a good 35, 40 kilometers at least west and uphill from the Yarden. So, and we're talking about the whole nation moving there. So from the previous set, it sounded like as soon as you cross the Yarden, you're supposed to go there. Parenthetically, if you read Sefer Yoshua, it didn't happen that way. They entered, they did Brit Milah, they did Korban Pesach, they destroyed Yericho, they went after Ha'ai, they lost, they did it again, and then finally they come and do this. Kind of strange. The Tosefta and Sota deals with that sequencing problem. Not our topic, but wanted to bring it to your attention. I'm speaking fast because I'm going to get to the part where I speak slow in a minute. Now, again, we're told the Satao Tambasid. You're going to take these rocks and plaster them again. Uvanita sham mizbeach l'Adonai Elohecha. So besides those stones, you're supposed to build a mizbeach there. Mizbach avanim lo tenif aleim barzel. Meaning it is a unhewn rocks that are going to be there as the mizbeach. Not the rocks that you plastered; those could be hewn, but these can't be hewn; they can't be cut. Avanim shleimot tivneh mizbach Adonai Elohecha valita alav olot v'Adonai Elohecha. So you build a proper mizbeach; it's complete, and you bring korbanot olah, v'zavachta shlamim v'achalta sham, and bring shlamim and eat them. Samachta lifnei Adonai Elohecha. So there's going to be a big party. By the way, we have no idea what this party is about. Now I'm going to slow down a little bit. Let's put this together. Moshe says when you cross the Yarden, you're going to set up rocks, you're going to plaster them and write the words of the Torah on them, and then you're going to bring these rocks up to Har Eval, plaster them, build a mizbeach, have a whole celebration, and rejoice there. And write the words of the Torah on these rocks, which sounds like now we got two sets of rocks. And when is this happening? All unclear. Now, by the Ber Moshe v'Kohanim Alvim Kol Yisrael Lemor, Haskei to Shema Yisrael Hayom Hazeh Ni'etel L'Am L'Adonai Elohecha. And this is a summary of what we've been doing till now, which is today you have become a nation to God, meaning became a nation to God 40 years ago at Har Sinai. Meaning there's a new Brit, and this new generation has now entered the Brit, and you are now Hashem's nation. Beautiful. That's now in the desert. And that means you listen to the mitzvot. Okay. So far, everything fits within the construct of what Sefer Dvarim is about, which is a repetition of mitzvot, taking the new generation that was born in the desert or were very young when they left Mitzrayim, and bringing them into the breed, recovenanting with them, and setting them up for life in Israel. And then we're told that they should, when they come into Israel, just like you set up a court system, and just like if you want, you have a king, similarly, you set up these rocks and have the words of the Torah in them. So far, nothing strange. And suddenly things change dramatically. I want to remind you that there was already a mention of Har Eval earlier in Sefer Dvarim for the first time. Back at the beginning of Parshat Re'eh, we were told, see, I am giving you a blessing and a curse. And where is that going to happen? Bahar Grizim and Har Eval. And we're given exact directions of what it is. It's the mountains that overlook the city of Shechem. Now I'm going to ask you, I can't see all of you here. I'm actually going to unshare for a minute so I can see more of you. I'm going to ask you, by a show of hands, you can put your hand up on the reaction. How many of you have been up to Har Grizim? I see some hands. All right, so I see a few people have been up to Har Grizim. Okay, very good. We'll go back to here. We're going to talk about Har Grizim a little bit. But notice what happens. Now, by the way, we never heard about this. Meaning, up until now, what do we hear in this passage? Cross the Yarden, bring the rocks up to Har Eval, which is on the north side of Shechem, and make a mizbeach there, and bring korbanot and rejoice. Okay, what are you rejoicing over? It looks like you're rejoicing over your entrance into the land. Why there? We'll talk about it. But then it gets strange. The following will stand up to bless the nation on Har Grizim. Har Grizim is the mountain that's, of course, south of Shechem, immediately south of Shechem. Grizim and Ebal are two mountains that overlook the city of Shechem and face each other. And who is going to be up on Har Grizim? Shimon v'Levi v'Yehuda v'Yisachar v'Yosef v'Binyamin. And by the way, you could tell by the size and the color. And by the way, this is not political. And I know Torah motion is Canadian, so red and blue mean, I don't know what they mean. They don't mean the same thing as they mean here. But in any case, this is not political. I just picked two different colors. Shimon v'Levi v'Yehuda v'Yisachar v'Yosef v'Binyamin, which means the entire tribe or representatives of the tribe of Shimon and Levi and Yehuda, Yisachar, Yosef, Binyamin are going to go up to Har Grizim or face Har Grizim and going to recite some sort of a bracha to the people. And then ve'eli amdu ala kol Har Eval. And by the way, why do you want this at all? The following are going to be on Har Eval uttering a curse. And who are they? Reuven, Gad, v'Asher, Zvulun, Dan, v'Naftali. And then afterwards, we find out in the passage afterwards what they're supposed to say. They're supposed to say, "Cursed is a man who does da 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 da," and there's a list of 11 different terrible things that a person might do, and everybody says Amen. And we have a masoret based on just these psukim and then people would turn to Har Grizim and then say Baruch Asher Lo, meaning blessed is somebody who doesn't do those things, and everybody says Amen. Beautiful. So I have some very simple questions to ask about this. Question number one is, look at the lineup of the tribes. What strikes you as odd about that lineup? It's right in front of you on the screen. What strikes you odd about that lineup?
Isn't that the tribes in red are the ones that wanted to settle on the other side of the Jordan?
Oh, very good. Reuven and Gad. But how does that explain Asher's, Zvulun, Dan, and Naphtali? You got a good point. And that actually is going to play into what we're doing. What else?
What is Menashe?
Where's Menashe? Very good. Where is Menashe? Anybody want to answer? Chaim, where's Menashe?
That's
Okay.
Yosef.
Yosef.
Yosef is there
Yosef.
instead of Ephraim and Menashe. Yosef is there
Yosef.
instead of Ephraim
Right,
and Menashe.
exactly. So I was hoping you would also ask where's Ephraim,
Yeah.
because the reality is that we have Yosef. Now, here's an interesting piece. The Ramban points out in Zot HaBracha, in the commentary,
Wait a second.
that we always have 12. No matter what happens, we have 12 tribes. when Eliyahu sets up the rocks around the Mizbeach on Har HaKarmel, he sets up 12 to represent the 12 tribes. Who are the 12 tribes? So I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you a little rabbinic secret. You want to hear this? Okay, don't give it away. Rabbi Jay, please don't tell anybody that I publicized this. Little rabbinic secret. There's a two-word
Levi is
answer.
missing also, sorry.
There's a two-word answer that that you can use, which will answer almost any question you're asked and be right. All right, it's a two-word answer, and the word is it depends. Try it. Think about it. In any question, it depends will always be a right answer. Is this mutter? It depends. Is this kosher? It depends. Right? Because we ask. Now, there's always 12 tribes, but who are the 12 tribes? I just taught you. What's the answer? I know
It
you're all
depends.
yelling. It
Depends.
depends. Correct. It depends.
It depends.
Good. Excellent. You got it. Good. We're going to do a sing along and we'll be great. It depends. Now, it depends on the following. This is the superficial approach. If we count Levi as a tribe, then Yosef is a tribe and Ephraim and Asher are gone. If, on the other hand, Levi is not counted, then Yosef divides into Ephraim and Asher, and Yosef disappears as a name. By the way, test it, you'll find it true throughout. Moshe sends 12 scouts, but he doesn't send Levi. Why? Because he sends a fellow named Yehoshua from Ephraim, and he sends somebody from Manasseh. There are 12 camps, but they don't include Levi. Why? Because they include Ephraim, Manasseh, and Binyamin on the west side. So whenever you reckon the 12, there will always be 12. And the only question is, Levi in or out? And if Levi's in, then Manasseh and Ephraim become Yosef. If Levi's out, it's Ephraim and Manasseh. Okay, that's the reality. So, as we say in Japanese, Hadron Kusha Laduchta. That's not Japanese, by the way. Our question is now back to the beginning, which is, so why is Yosef and Levi, why are they on this list? After all, in everything that's happened in the Midbar, in everything that's happened in the census and in the war and everything else, Ephraim and Manasseh are distinct and Levi's not there. Levi's not there because Levi's not fighting. Levi's not there because Levi's not getting land. Levi's not there because Levi's going to be getting all sorts of special gifts from everybody because they're the civil servants. They're getting cities, they're getting tithes, etc. So why indeed is the list here a list of the 12 sons of Yaakov and not the 12 Shvatim? That's question one. Question two is, why are they divided this way? Why is Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar, Yosef, and Yamin on Har Gerizim, and the other 6 on Har Eval?
You have 4 who are the sons of Levi and 2 who are the sons of Rachel on Mount Serim, and you have the one with the curses. They're the sons of the handmaidens, and Reuven, who's fallen out of repute, and Zevulun, who is a son of Levi, but I don't think he did anything wrong.
Right. So your theory works perfectly until you get to Zevulun. That's right. In other words, what you're suggesting, Nomi, what you're suggesting is a very good idea, is that Reuven, because of Bilhah, or Reuven because of the choice to live outside of Israel, and then Gad, Asher, Dan, and Naphtali are the children of the Shfachot. And the question, what did Zvulun do to deserve this? But I could have given you a much easier lineup. If you want to divide Yaakov's kids 6 and 6, how do you divide them? It's very easy. Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar, Zvulun on one side, Yosef, Binyamin, and the other 4 on the other side. That becomes easy. So there's something else going on here. Our theory has to work, and it doesn't work. Why is the division like this? I'm going to ask you 2 more questions, though. It's not Pesach, but we're going 4 questions anyways. Question number 1 is, why is the list Levi and Yosef and not Ephraim and Manasseh? Second question is, why are they divided this way? The third question is, why are they doing this here at Shechem? I mean, where would we instinctively like them to do this brit?
In Yericho.
Okay, that's not a bad idea. When you conquer your first town, do this brit. That's fine. Good.
the entrance. At the
Good.
entrance.
At the entrance. I like that. That's a very good idea, Chaim. It should be at Yericho. What's another possible place to do it?
Yerushalayim.
Good. And if Yerushalayim is not yet, I would have done that. But if Yerushalayim is not yet on the ticket, how about Shiloh?
Shiloh. But it's
You
not
go
in
to
the
Shiloh,
ticket either. It's
and
not
by
in
the
the
way,
ticket.
there are mountains that surround Shiloh. You could be on two mountains facing each other with the Mishkan in the middle, and it'd be perfect and beautiful. Instead, it's here. And now I'm going to ask the big question, which is, why? What is this breed at all? What is this? Remember, we had a breed at Har Sinai, Naaseh v'Nishma. Remember that one? Okay, good. Then we had another breed that is happening right now in Dvarim, where we re-covenanted with God, the new generation, Shema Yisrael, Shemata Yisrael, Hasketu Shema Yisrael, over and over and over. We're committing to the mitzvot, etc. What is this breed?
This is the
very
breed
strange.
that Hashem promised the land.
Eh,
That when he had Abraham walk the length of the land, and he
Oh,
said,
good.
"This
So
land
good.
is-"
So explain. So what's this breed then? Very nice. What's this breed?
the breed
is the
of
breed?
how they, the breed.
Remember,
of
what is a breed? What is a breed? A breed is when two parties make an agreement between themselves with consequences to failing to follow the agreement. Brit Ben Avatarim, Brit Milah, Brit Har Sinai, Brit Arvot Moab. Every Brit we've had, whether with the nation or with individuals, has always been an agreement of what each party is going to do and consequences for failure to perform and rewards for doing it. So what's this Brit? We've already have a Brit. This same nation has made a Brit. They're going to cross the Jordan without Moshe. They're going to make another Brit. Why?
This is a completion of Brit Ben Avtarim between Hashem and Abraham, that he says, when we bring you back to the land that
Very
we
nice.
started.
Very nice. I like that. I like that theory, Chaim. That's a nice idea. Big problem is that doesn't explain Shechem. And if it's Brit Ben Avtarim, it should have been in Hebron or in Beersheba, the cities that Abraham lived in, right? And the second thing is that if that's the case, why are these tribes? Why are all the tribes in Aruch and Arur? What's that about?
Shechem, okay, Shechem is because of Yosef.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask with Rabbi Jay's permission to pull rank a little bit because we have limited time, and I want to take us in a slight direction, and then if there's time, we'll hear some other theories from you. By the way, the Rishonim were bothered not by who was included, but by the layout. So you'll see that the Ibn Ezra said something somewhat similar to what you said. I think what Naomi said, right? Ibn Ezra here says, Ala bracha b'nei gvirot. So who is standing on Al bracha? It is Rachel and Leah's children. And the four children of Bilhah and Zilpah on the curse. But we have a problem because there's too many Bnei Leah. It's a math problem. There's too many Bnei Leah, and we need another two spots. So we're assuming So he says, so the eldest of Bnei Leah and the youngest of Bnei Leah went to go make up the two on the other side. A very nice idea. We have to see if that really plays out. I want to add another component to this. You mentioned earlier that Reuven and Gad had already separated themselves. This already happened in Bamidbar. They made a deal with Moshe that they would inherit on the East Bank. So Reuven and Gad theoretically shouldn't be in this at all. And if I want 12, I got an easy solution, which is, especially if we take Chaim's idea that this is the fulfillment of Brit Ben Avtarim, Reuven and Gad shouldn't be in this. They're out of that. It should be Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar, Yosef, Menashe, Ephraim, Ubinyamin, Asher, Zvulun, Dan, and Naphtali. There's your 12. Very simple. All right, so who will go with Yosef, Ephraim, and Asher? Then fine, but we'll figure that out. The Chizkuni, Chizkiah ben Manoach, has a different approach. Here he says the following. Eli amdu kol ha'omdim al habracha yu b'nei agvirot. Basically, the same thing as Ibn Ezra. La'idei shebnei le'ah rabim natlu me'em ha'katan v'hagadol la'ashlim ha'minyan al bnei ha'shfachot shlo yu rak daled v'yu ha'kol ha'gadol v'ha'katan ha'gadol Ruvain. Oh, l'fi shaya chashud mi Bilhah V'yana amen al arur shochev meshet re'ehu v'aviv v'yadu bo v'adai shelo pashav davar. So he adds in something more than Ibn Ezra said, which is similar to what one of you said earlier, that Reuven was already somewhat castigated, not because of their choice of living outside the land, but because of Reuven's sin with Bilhah. And one of the curses that's uttered is, cursed is the man who lies with his fellow's wife. So when Reuven is standing there and saying that, we all know, oh, Reuven's not guilty. Of course, that's a little bit of a stretch because Reuven is long dead. It's a Shevet Reuven, not the man Reuven. Right? And so he echoes the Ibn Ezra and kind of amplifies what he says. So I'm going to take you off the share for a minute because we're going to talk about stuff that's not on these texts, and then I can see more of you, although most of you are camera shy in any case. Let's start with Shechem. Why would Shechem be an important city to us at all? Why would it be a place to go as soon as we enter the land to make a brit?
Yosef.
Now, there's a separate question. Hold on a second. There's a separate question, which is maybe, but I don't think related, which is why does Yoshua have his farewell address in Shechem? That's a separate thing, the last parak of Yoshua, but I don't think that's related. Why did Hashem command that this ceremony be around Shechem? So let's talk about Shechem. Where is Shechem? So the answer will surprise you. Some of you have been near Shechem. Some of you might have gone even into Shechem. Back in the old days, I went into Shechem on a regular basis, but that was the old days. Shechem is the absolute center of Eretz Yisrael. It is. Take a look at the borders in Tanakh, and you will see that Shechem is right in the middle. But Shechem is something else. Shechem is the only spot in Eretz Yisrael which is truly an international crossroads. We have to remember that Yerushalayim is a strange choice of a capital because it is far away from any international trade. Not only that, but it's resource poor. It's a lot of difficulties with Yerushalayim that make its selection somewhat mystical and a mystery. Shechem is really in the middle. And if you've ever stood up on Har Gerizim and looked down, you see that the road going out, and by the way, that was, of course, the ancient spice route, went right through there. That's what the brothers looked up and saw when the Ishmaelim were coming with the camels on the way down to Egypt. That's how you would go. And you'd cut across the land at Shechem, Derech Mavah Shemesh, through there, and then you would take the coastal route, Derech Eretz Plishtim, down to Egypt. That's how people traveled. Shechem was as an international of a city as existed. And by the way, we read about that in the story, our first story, with the city of Shechem. We mentioned Shechem very at the very beginning. Avram comes to Shechem and he builds a mizbeach. But when the whole story of Dinah happens in Shechem, what does Hamor say to the brothers? The land is wide. It's you can be merchants here. You can make a lot of money. You can do well. And that's indeed what the area looks like. So they go to Shechem because Shechem's the center of Israel. Shechem has another significance for this family. Mm-hmm. Let's roll back a little bit.
Yosef.
Who are we? We are a nation that has been wandering for all of our lives, because most of us were born in this desert. We haven't even had Brit Milah, most of us. We have to have another Brit Milah with Yoshua, right? We've been wandering all this time. Why are we wandering? Because we were in the Midbar and we made a huge mistake. Our parents made a huge mistake and we're paying for it. Okay. Why were we in the Midbar? We're not naturally nomads. Why were we in the Midbar? Because we left Mitzrayim. Why did we leave Mitzrayim? Because Mitzrayim was a terrible place for us to be in. I'll keep asking, why was Mitzrayim a terrible place for us to be in? Because we were slaves. Why were we slaves? So that's a complex question, but it all comes back to one name that Chaim keeps mentioning, which is Yosef. Think about it. Why did we end up in Egypt at all? We ended up in Egypt because of Yosef. I'm not saying to blame him, but you're very good. A good point. That Yosef rises to a position of leadership, becomes the viceroy in Egypt. And as a result of that, when we come down to buy food, what happens? Suddenly, we have a choice of going back to Canaan and living as, shall we say, poor nomads who are still struggling for food for a while, or being in the top 1% of Egyptian life. We made that choice. We ended up staying there. Yosef took care of us. Everything's fine. Yaakov died there, and we stayed. The brothers all died, and we stayed. And of course, the rest was history, became slavery. Let's roll back a little bit before that. Why did Yosef end up in Mitzrayim? How did this whole thing start? Next time that you eat some maror, and if you really eat maror that you don't like, think about how bitter it is, why you're eating bitter stuff. Why did Yosef end up in Egypt? And there's one simple answer.
What?
His brothers threw him in a pit. That's it. Without that, none of this happens. His brothers don't throw him in a pit, in a cistern. Then Yosef hangs out with his brothers. They go to get along, they don't get along, whatever it is, and we move on. But the brothers want to kill Yosef. Let's kill him. Let's throw him in that cistern and he'll die. So Yehuda does his thing, Reuben does his thing. Neither one of them really works very well. And in the end, Yosef is sold as a slave, and the brothers have no idea where he is. I'm following the Rashbam here. Brothers, in the end, got to the cistern too late. He was already sold. And so Yosef ending up in Egypt is all caused by the brothers' behavior towards Yosef.
But how does that square with the Brit Bein HaBitarim, where God says they are going to be enslaved?
Very good question. Very good question.
No matter what.
Okay, good. Shelley, I'm going to pick it up. Give me 5 minutes and I'll come back to it. If I don't, then remind me. Okay, I'm going to come back to that. Very good. By the way, I'm quoting Chazal. Rav, Masachet Shabbat says, "Leolam al yishaneh adam ben abanim." Person should never favor one son over the others. Because of the little bit of money that Yaakov spent extra on the cloak that he gave Yosef, as a result of that, one thing led to the other, and his descendants ended up as slaves. So, Shelley, that question is also on Rav, not just on me. In other words, Chazal are willing to point the finger at Yaakov, favoring Yosef as the direct cause for Shibud Mitzrayim. So we'll talk about Bnei B'tarim. I'll address it. So if we roll back now, we, the generation that are now entering the land, the generation that was born in a desert and have been wandering homeless, and now are going to finally come back to the home that we've heard about from our parents and grandparents as being promised to us. The reason that all of this happened is because of how we treated each other. How we treated each other. Right. So now I want to show you something on here. And hopefully this will elucidate a little bit. This is a map. It's not a good map. It's an okay map, a fair map of the division of the Shvatim and how they are to inherit. If you look at the map, you will find something interesting, but we have to add in another component. You notice that Reuven and Gad are in the East Bank, of course. This is the final division of the land. Really roughly, there's nothing very exact about this, but really roughly. However, let's roll this back and ask, what was the original division of the land supposed to be? Meaning, as they're marching in the Midbar, where was each Shevet supposed to get land? And the reason I ask that is because when Reuven and Gad approached Moshe, there was a plan in place, and their request changed the plan. There's a point that Professor
on the west of the Jordan.
Right, but where? That's the problem. We don't know where they were supposed to get land, and I'm going to posit that for different reasons, Reuven and Gad were supposed to be in the far north. I'll tell you why Gad was supposed to be in the far north, because look at this. Naphtali and Asher are the furthest north tribes. You see them? I'm also going to make the following argument, which again is not my argument, that Dan originally had land. Their land was supposed to be in here, also near the Kinneret, above the Kinneret. The map got changed, gerrymandered because of Reuven and Gad, and things got turned around, and Dan ended up being allotted territory near Tel Aviv, which is why we call Tel Aviv Gush Dan, and the bus company is Dan, and the Dan Hotel. Very nice. But Dan never was successful in conquering their land. They ended up hanging out somewhere near where this cursor is, and they ended up going up, way up here into the middle of Naphtali's territory and conquering some land and renaming that city Dan. And if you look into Parak Lamed Gimel, Lamed Daled, at the very end of Chumash, you can see Dan was probably originally supposed to be up here, which now makes a lot of sense. Dan, Naphtali, and Gad and Asher were probably supposed to be way in the north, away from the center. They are the Bnei Shfachot. Reuven very likely was also given that land because Reuven, already on Yaakov's deathbed, had been disfavored. Reuven was supposed to be the Bechor, and he lost it because of his behavior with Bilhah, and he was really disenfranchised. And so I'm suggesting that the original layout of the Shvatim was as follows. Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar, Yosef, Binyamin were supposed to be south of Har Grizim. Reuven, Gad, Asher, Zvulun, Dan, and Naphtali were supposed to originally be north of Har Grizim, north of Shechem. And I want to give you a contemporary model, which is an American model, but I'm sure that there's some Canadian translation for it. Let's say that after all of the craziness that's happened in this country over the past, we'll call it 20 years of exceeding excessive and accelerating partisanship and animosity and blue states and red states and all of that. Let's say that someone were to come up with a project that said, you know, we really have to come together. A union divided against itself will not long stand. Invoke Abe Lincoln, invoke Ben Franklin, doesn't matter. And so they want to make some very big ceremonial statement of unity. Well, here's exactly the way to do it. Get the governors from all the states that are west of the Mississippi to stand on the west bank of the Mississippi. And all the governors of the states that are on the east of the Mississippi go to the east bank of the Mississippi. And they face each other. And they make a commitment to each other that they will ever be united and work together and an end to all of this hatred. Suggestion. What I'm suggesting is that the makeup of these Shvatim is that they are not now Shvatim. If they were Shvatim, it would be Menashe and Ephraim. What this is a snapshot of the family in Yaakov's life. In Yaakov's life, there was no Menashe and Ephraim yet, and Levi was a regular Levi. At the time of Yosef's sale, at the time of the animosity between the brothers that was so ugly and so terrible that it reverberates throughout history. Just read. In a couple of weeks, we're going to read Eila Ezkaran, Yom Kippurim. And what is the premise of the martyrology of the Asarug and Malchut? That it's all divine punishment for the sale of Yosef. And that goes throughout history. And so what we do is we replicate the family identity from that time. And we stand in the spot where we were going to inherit land in that lineup. So Shimon, Levi gets land like everybody else. Yehuda, Yisachar, Yosef, and Yamin are south. Therefore, they stand on Har Grizim. And the others are north. Therefore, they stand on Har Eval, and they face each other, and they make a breed. Now, what we've addressed is, and now I'm going to come back to Shelley's question about Brit Milah Tarim. What we've addressed is why this lineup of tribes? Why this division of tribes? And why Shechem? So Chaim has said it a few times. Where was Yosef when he was sold? He was actually in a town about 10 miles north of Shechem called Dotan. I actually took my son there for his bar mitzvah trip a bunch of years ago. He's now in yeshiva. I took him there, and we had to go with the army to Dotan, and we actually found a place called Bor Yosef. It's a fascinating trip if you can arrange it with the army to go in. It was a very important battle in 67, Emek Dotan. But Yosef was sold out of Dotan, so why Shechem? Because where did Yaakov send Yosef to visit his brothers that ended up in this thing? He said,
Shechem.
Go to Shechem and see them. He gets to Shechem, and an anonymous person, Chazal say what they say, anonymous person says, oh, they went to Dotan. He goes to Dotan, and what happens? But Shechem is always the city we associate with Mechirat Yosef, and it becomes a town that has a bloody and an upsetting kind of aura around it, which of course finds its culmination in the splitting of the Malchut that happens in Shechem. Malachim Aleph Perek Yud Bet. And so Shechem is that place where the brotherly hatred really found its apex, even though in matter of fact that happened a few miles away. And so they go to Shechem. Besides which, if you've ever gone up to Har Gerizim, you know that Har Gerizim and Har Ival make a natural amphitheater, which is amazing. You get up there and yell, and it can be heard for miles. So it's a great place to make this brit. But the other question I asked, which was, why do we need a brit at all? Why do we need a brit at all? We've already got Brit Sinai. Okay, our generation has Brit Arvot Moav. We're making a brit at the end of Dvarim. Why do we have to make another one when we come into the land? Because the brit made at Har Sinai is a brit between whom? It's a brit between Am Yisrael and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The brit that we repeated on Arvot Moav is a brit between Bnei Yisrael and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The brit here is a brit between Bnei Yisrael and Bnei Yisrael. The brit here is not us facing God, it's us facing each other. And the brit here is not at a spot of great glory and great mystical thunder and lightning like Har Sinai, or a place of great anticipation like Arvot Moav we're about to cross in. It's a place of great shame. It's a place of great reminder and awareness of what happens if the ties between us unravel and we turn on each other. We need to be reminded that coming into the land, as much as our success in the land is dependent on our fidelity to God and our unswerving loyalty to mitzvot, that if we have all that, but we don't take care of each other, we turn on each other, then we lose it all. And that's what this brit is about. And I suggest that that's the purpose of this brit. And that's the reason that we go back to the same 12 sons who were alive at the time of Mechirat Yosef, and that the lineup is based on the territory that they were originally supposed to inherit. Parenthetically, that point about Reuben and Gad's demand changing the map is something that Professor Yehuda Elitzur Zal made, a point he made many, many years ago, in suggesting also where the original territory of Dan was. And if you're interested, you can read about that in my book on Bereshit. But I'd like to address Shelley's question about Brit Ben Abitarim. And a matter of fact, I'm going to do you a solid here, even though it wasn't part of the shiur. I'd like to bring it up here. And we'll take a look at Brit Ben Abitarim together. All right. It's amazing what you can do here. This and boom, and there we go. Okay, here's Brit Ben Abitarim. See it, Shelley?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Good. Yeah, absolutely. No, it's a good question. Now, I'm going to make it a little bigger for us. Well, lost that. Never works. I'll do that. Hold on 1 second. My apologies. Okay, we'll just keep it that size. Hopefully, you guys will be able to see. Vayomer Avram. Now, let's take a look at these words, which Shelley contends necessitated us going to Egypt no matter how we behaved. Let's see it. Vayomer Avram. What does God say to Avram? Yadoa Teda. You should for sure know. Ki ger yeh zaracha be'eretz lo lahem. What does that mean? Ger yeh zaracha be'eretz lo lahem.
Stranger will be a stranger and not in their land.
Your descendants will be strangers in a foreign land. Which, by the way, is strange to say to Avram because Avram's a stranger in a foreign land. Okay. Va'avadum v'linuotam. And those people, meaning the people of that land, will enslave them and oppress them. Arba me'ot shana, for 400 years. Okay. V'gam et hagoy asher yavodu dan anochi. By the way, the nation that oppresses, that enslaves them, I'll judge. Then they'll leave without a wealth. You will die in peace. A good old age. And pay close attention to those words. The fourth generation will return here. Because the sin of the locals is not filled, meaning God's not going to dispossess the locals and let your children conquer the land till they've fully sinned. So I know it's going to be 4 generations. Okay. Two questions for you. Is this brit a one-time event that's going to happen or a cycle? And if it's a one-time event that's supposed to happen, when did it happen? What do you think? Is God saying at one particular point in history, Abraham, you'll have descendants who go through all this, and that's it? Or is he saying this is something that will happen on occasion in history?
The latter.
The latter. It'll happen on occasion in history.
That's why we say the Hisha Amda.
Oh, very good. Excellent. And by the way, I'll point out to you that in our Haggadot, when we recite Baruch Shomer Avtachato Yisrael, right before Hisha Amda, and we quote the first 2 psukim, Hisha Amda Lavotenu V'lan. Baruch Shomer Avtachato Yisrael Baruch Hu Shakadosh Baruch Hu, and remember the next word. Shakadosh Baruch Hu. What?
Yatzilenu Me'eda.
No. The how do you call it? Baruch Shomer Avtachato Yisrael Baruch Hu Shakadosh Baruch Hu.
Chishav
V'Taketz, which means HaKadosh Baruch Hu calculated the end. Calculated, that's one time, right? However, in the Rambam and Shmuel Eleket and many other Haggadot, the word is not Chishev, but Mechashev, which totally changes what's going on. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Mechashev V'Taketz. HaKadosh Baruch Hu continues to calculate the end to fulfill the Brit, which means Brit Ben Avatarim is a historic cycle. Now, if you want to take the position that Brit Ben Avatarim is a one-time deal, then of course you're going to have a problem with Hisha Amda because it indicates it happens in multiple generations. But let's say it's a one-time deal. When did it happen? When was it? So Shelley wants to tell us it's Yetziat Mitzrayim, right, Shelley?
Yes, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't say they're going to go down to Egypt or anything like that. It just seems to say 4th generation. Is it possible that Yaakov thought that when he went up to live with Lavan, that was it?
Are you quoting the Rav, or did you come out that on your own?
I heard it. I didn't come up with that on my own. I don't know who I'm quoting, though.
Okay, so you're quoting the Rav. Rabbi Soloveitchik, in a shir, suggested that Yaakov, in one of his Parshat Shiurim he gave in the evening in YU, suggested that Yaakov thought that he was living through Brit Ben Avatarim. After all, he was a stranger in a foreign land. He was worked and oppressed for a really long time. We'll talk about Abraham Shana in a minute. God judged the one who was oppressing him. Look at the spotted and the speckled goats. He left with great wealth. Avram was already dead, so that worked. And the 4th generation returned, because when did Yaakov say, I want to go back home? The minute that Yosef was born. Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Yosef. Because we know that Yaakov didn't consider anybody but Rachel to be his real wife. Take a look at Yehuda's speech before Yosef. And so therefore, when Yosef was born, he finally had a 4th generation, time to go. Which may be why Yaakov was so surprised that when he got back to the land, things were not smooth and comfortable. But it's very possible that he thought that was the case. Now, let's just say it is Yetziat Mitzrayim. We have a different problem. How long were we in Egypt?
210.
And maybe even less, but okay, 210. How long were we enslaved? So let's think about this. We came down to Egypt when Yosef was 39. Yosef died at 110. That's 71 years. For all of those years, without a doubt, we were upper crust of Egyptian society. While all the other Egyptians sold their land and ultimately sold themselves as state slaves, we were living off high off the hog. So that's already 70 years that we're not slaves. So that takes it down from 210 to 140. The Ramban suggests that the slavery lasted about 80 years. And take a look at the Ramban at the beginning of Shemot. So it's not 400 years. There is no 400 years. 400 years may be Tanakh talk for a really long time, because 40 and 400 are used that way. And who knows? But that didn't happen in Mitzrayim. Also, what's Dor Revi'i, Ashuv Ohena? What's the fourth generation returning? What does that mean? If how do you call it? If we're talking about Mitzrayim. So the problem is that Brit Tarim is very murky, but surely there's a larger problem here. There's a famous story in the Gemara, which, by the way, that's a redundant term because everything in the Gemara is famous. But there was a story in the Gemara about elaborating on the interaction between Chizkiyahu HaMelech and Yeshayahu HaNavi at the time of the threat of Sancheriv coming to attack Yerushalayim. And famously, Yeshayahu comes to Chizkiyahu, and the Gemara makes it very tense because it says, Yeshayahu said he should visit me because we saw your Avam come to Elisha. And Chizkiyahu said he should visit me because we saw Eliyahu go to Achav. You know, the Navi comes to the king. Everybody thinks that they should get that honor. So what did God do? God made Chizkiyahu sick, and he said, Yeshayahu, you got to do Bikkur Cholim. It's a brilliant Gemara. Yeshayahu comes to Chizkiyahu and says, God has said you're going to die. He said, why? Because you didn't have kids. So the Gemara goes on and says, but Chizkiyahu said, I saw, B'nivua, however, that if I had kids, the kids would turn out rotten. So I didn't have kids. And Yeshayahu, in this Gemara, in this Agadah, Yeshayahu utters a line, which is a critical line. He says, Bahari Kavshe de Rahman Alamalach. Why are you getting involved in God's secrets? At Avid Maidepaktach. You do what God commanded you. Whatever God wants to, he'll do with it. You are supposed to have kids. You have kids. If God turns directions that they turn out to be rotten, that's God's will. But your job is to do your mitzvot. Same way here. Let's say that there is a promise hovering over us saying you're going to be enslaved and you're going to suffer, but you'll end up leaving with great wealth. And then let's say that we behave like really terrible people and sell our brother into slavery, and that leads to that promise being fulfilled. Does that in any way get us off the hook for our behavior? Not even a little bit. And let's say we had not sold Yosef. Is it possible that God would have said, okay, this breed will play out in a different country, at a different time, with a different way? Of course. So we still have to look at the proximate cause that led to the slavery and led ultimately to us coming out of Egypt, having been in Egypt and needing this breed to remind us that the only way that we're going to be successful in staying together in the land is if we take care of each other and never turn on each other. The same level of fidelity and the same abhorrence of treachery that we have in our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is exemplified with the Ahavta, Eit Adonai L'Echa B'chol Levavcha, B'chol Nafshecha, B'chol Miodecha, has to be the way that we look at every other Jew. And that, of course, ends up being our downfall, because why was Yerushalayim destroyed in the year 586? Read Yirmiyahu, you could see. Read Zechariah Chet, you could see. It's because regardless of our behavior, and yes, there was Avodah Zarah, and yes, Menashe had killed a lot of people, we were mistreating the poor. We were not giving the widow and the orphan a fair shake. We were taking advantage of people who were disenfranchised. And Zechariah reminds us, if you want to celebrate the rebuilding, celebrate it by fixing your society. You want to ensure continuity, you ensure it by making sure that your society has corrected the ills that led to the destruction. By the way, that's the message in this week's Haftarot of Nechama, if you look very carefully. So in any case, that's the Parsha of Har Grizim and Har Eival, and a suggestion about how we're to understand what the significance of this brit is and why the Shvatim are laid out the way they are. And now, with a couple minutes remaining, I'll open it up to questions if anybody has questions or comments on the shiur or anything related.
About Shem, Yaakov promised Yosef the area of Shechem. כי שכם אחד נתתי לך.
If that's what that means, right? Look at Uncle's.
Yeah,
Uncle's
it's
has Chula.
possible. It's
Right.
possible.
Right. Good point. Chezke, I see you get your hand raised.
No, just I heard a theory that the way that the Shvatzim were divided was this was the closest possibility to split them even in half.
Yes, I've seen that also, and it's an attractive idea, but I'm not so sure why that would be important. Why would it be important to have like an even amount of people on each mountain? I mean, I have heard it.
I like what you say very much, especially the mechila that is required at this brit is bein Adam lechaveru, which is the mechila we also are required to give on Yom Kippur, because it doesn't work bein Adam, only bein Adam. And my theory is that the brit here is Hayom Hazeh Yechaper Alechem.
Oh, I like that. That's beautiful, Gershom. Thank you. From less than a mile away from my house. Thank you. Good to hear from you. Okay.
That's the words Hayom Hazeh are key words, not only in Vayikra, but in the Tochacha that we read on Shabbat.
Right. I see that Marcy sent a message here that says something very powerful, of course, which is, you know, I'm going to rephrase it a little bit. I think you all saw it, but which is that it's all nice talk, but, you know, what are we actually going to do about it? Right. So I was speaking with a colleague of mine, a lovely guy I teach with, and we're joking around about what kind of kippah Mashiach's going to wear. Right. You've all heard this. And he said he's going to wear a checkered kippah with one little corner struga, one little corner velvet, and all of that. And I said, yeah, but everybody's going to look at the part they don't like and point to it. That's the problem. And that's why he doesn't come. So we have our work cut out for us. But of course, Talmud Torah is at the center of it. And I want to give everybody here Yishar Koyach for participating in continued learning. And because by learning, we really get a sense of where we need to be going. But hopefully we take it to heart and actually move ourselves in that direction. Yes, Sima.
I was just thinking that that notion of having equal amounts of people on each mountain kind of goes along with leveling the playing fields of equality between the
Oh,
brothers.
that's nice.
So
Nice
it
idea.
ties into your theory.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, everybody, I just want to wish everybody a K'tiva v'chatima tova, and before that, a Shabbat Shalom. And thank you, Rabbi Jay, for inviting me. I always love teaching and learning Torah together with your lovely group.
Thank you very
תודה
much.
רבה ושבת שלום.
Thank you very
Shabbat
much for
shalom.
the very interesting shir. And of course, you know, when you asked the question right at the beginning, you know, what's weird? It was interesting. The strangest thing, of course, why isn't, I mean, you alluded, it should be Reuben, Shiva, and Levi Yehuda, you know,
Right.
Reuben Skip. That's the, but anyways, thank you very much. And
Pleasure.
yes, Brit time next week, Nitzavim, continuing on the Brit, this really the Tavo leads into Nitzavim, and we always say these Parshiot the week of Slichas, at least Ashkenazim, the Sephardim being Slichas for a while. But thank you very much, and lots of learning opportunities leading up to Rosh Hashanah, of course. Tomorrow we continue my regular shir on the Siddur. We finished Ashrei last week, so we're starting the Hallelujahs. That'll be, please God, tomorrow morning at 9:30 a.m. And then next week we'll have our full course of 12 shiurim, the regular 12 shiurim we're having for Yontif. Next Thursday night, Miriam Krupka, who is director of the faculty. I don't know the exact title at Ramaz. She's basically one of the top administrators at Ramaz. She'll be giving the Parsha Shir next week. And we look forward to learning with you. And as always, please invite a friend. And everybody, Shabbat Shalom. And I'll echo the words, K'tiva v'chatima tova, but please God, we'll have opportunities to wish you that before Rosh Hashanah. And everybody should be well. Laila Tom, we hope to see you soon, you and your friends. And have a good night, everybody. Thank you very much.